Now that we have learned how to add and subtract polynomials, let's take a look at multiplying and dividing. When you multiply a polynomial, you simply apply the distributive property and the exponential product rule. Let's take a look at the product rule. When you are multiplying like powers, you add the exponents. So if we have x to the third times x to the fifth, you really have x to the eighth. You add the exponents because you have 3x's being multiplied times 5 more. So that's a total of 8 factors of x being multiplied. Okay, here we have a monomial, and we're going to multiply it to a trinomial. So we're just going to distribute. We get negative 21x to the third. There's an understood 1 here on that exponent. Then we get negative 3x squared. And then we get negative 12x. We can see this is in standard form, and this is going to be a cubic trinomial. Our next example is a binomial multiplied by a binomial. So here's the idea. You want to take this term and make sure you multiply it times each of these terms. And then you're going to take the negative 6 and multiply it by these terms. So we're going to do this in the same order every time. So I'm going to take this first term of the first binomial and multiply it by the first term of the second binomial. So this gives us 6x squared. Now we have to multiply the 2x times the 4. And we have multiplied the 2x by both of these terms. Now we take the negative 6 and multiply it, and we get negative 18x, and negative 6 times 4 is negative 24. Now notice these two middle terms are like terms, so we can combine. And we get 6x squared minus 10x minus 24. We have a quadratic trinomial. Now, you try these. Pause the video, and then when we come back together, we'll review them. Okay, we have negative 3x times negative 8x squared. That gives us positive 24x to the third. Then we get negative 12x squared. And then lastly, we get a positive 3x. We have a cubic trinomial. We have a binomial times a binomial. We're going to multiply the 7x first. And now we're going to distribute the negative 1. And then we're going to combine the two middle terms. Here's our quadratic term, our linear term, and our constant. We have a quadratic trinomial. In number 3, be careful. Don't think that this is 64x squared plus 4. We have an exponent of 2, and our base is 8x plus 2. So we must write out 8x plus 2 times 8x plus 2. And now we'll distribute. We're going to distribute the 8x first. And now we'll distribute the 2. And now we will combine the two middle terms. And we have a quadratic trinomial. And the last one, we multiply the 2x. Now we're multiplying the 8. And we're going to combine the two middle terms, and we see that they cancel out, and we are left with a quadratic binomial. Now let's take a look at dividing polynomials. So when we're dividing polynomials, in this course, we're only going to be dividing by a monomial. Now, one way you could look at this is you could break this apart, which I think it makes it easier to evaluate. So the denominator for each of these terms is 3x. Now, if this denominator could not divide into each of these terms, then we would just leave it as is. Now we're going to divide, but we have to apply the quotient rule. So let's refresh our memory with a quotient rule. When dividing like powers, you subtract exponents. So if we have x to the fifth over x to the second, we have x to the third because we subtract 5 minus 2. So let's evaluate each of these terms. So 3 into 12 is 4. X to the third over x to the 1 is x to the second. We have minus 9 divided by 3 is 3. X squared divided by x to the 1 is x to the 1. And then we have plus 6x divided by 3x. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then the x's cancel. So we have a quadratic trinomial. Let's look at our second example. Again, I think writing these out separately makes it a little bit easier to make less mistakes. So we can see that 6 can divide into each of these terms and x can divide into each of these terms. Therefore, we can simplify. 18 divided by 6 is 3. X to the fourth divided by x to the 1 leaves us with x to the third. 12 divided by 6 is 2. X squared divided by x to the 1 is x. And 6x divided by itself is simply 1. Now you try these. Pause the video. When we come back, we will go over them together. Okay, I'm going to write each of these terms out. And let's divide. This gives me 7x to the third plus 5x squared minus 3x, a cubic trinomial. We have a negative 6x squared plus negative divided by negative is positive 4x, and then a minus 2, a quadratic trinomial.